Hey, this is James. Welcome to the Coder Kids podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Jenna Saunders from ADHD Advocate. So here she is. Thanks so much for joining me for episode number 60, actually. This is exciting.
Wow, I get to be on
Yeah,
number six. That's awesome.
it feels like definitely past 1 year of like episodes if you're going to listen every week. So it's kind of a cool milestone for us. But can you introduce yourself? Obviously, I know a little bit, but you're the one that really knows your story. So what's the elevator pitch version of who you are and what you
Okay,
do?
elevator pitch. So I good gracious. So I was a teacher in high school and middle school, both online and in the classroom for 6.5, 7 years. I taught math and science. Did I say it was middle school and high school ages primarily? I love teenagers. I think they're hilarious. So that's why I chose those ages. I'm a mom. I love I love all things technology. I love playing video games. Right now, I'm running a podcast called Office ADHD to support adults with ADHD because I feel like there's a lot of things out there for kids, but not as much for adults. Cool thing is a lot of the stuff that I have for adults also supports kids because ADHD's, hereditary, so it's something that you have your entire life. Um, I love all sorts of things that are nerdy in technology. I also have a degree in business intelligence and data analytics is also my like full-time career that I'm moving into, and so I guess that's a brief explanation of what I do.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really awesome. Well, here's a question we just ask everyone, and I think it's a really good entry point, and that is what got you interested in tech in the first place? And yeah, what was that experience for you?
Oh, I was around, when they were first starting tech as far as that was kind of first coming into schools and coming into things. And I think I just didn't want to have to ask my older sister all the time how to fix the computer. And
Mm,
so I started getting into, okay, how do I do this on my own? And my dad actually was in tech from the very beginning, from the like whole when you had an entire room that was a
oh yeah.
computer that can do less than our phones do now. But he was in on it from the very start. And so we've always kind of seen it around my house. And I really wanted to play games. I still remember, funny story, when I was in middle school, I was in sixth grade, and I was part of their like tag program, their talented and gifted thing, and they took us to the like district office, and they're like, "We're gonna let you guys go play on the internet." Nowadays, they would never do this.
Oh
They
my
would never
gosh.
just give sixth graders free reign to the internet. Like, I
Oh
mean,
man, the internet
this
was a
just shows
different
how
place.
little they knew. I know, right? They're like,
Oh
"Oh, children."
yeah, check it out.
And like I looked
That's
around and like it seems like my friends knew what to do. They probably were like me, didn't know what to do either. Now that I, know how middle school minds think. But I was just like, search games. Enter.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember like as a kid being in a public library. Like, I've never said this before. Like I don't know where this memory came from, but this is this thing that you said kind of triggered this in me. And it's like I remember just like not knowing what to do either. And just like went to cheese.com. Like I don't know if that's I don't know if that's like a safe website. I don't know what it is, but back then it was just like somebody who really loved brie and like there was just cheese and it was like the Wikipedia for cheese or something back then. Like I don't know what it is now. I don't know if it's safe. But that was my memory of it. And I'm like so lucky I went to that and like pizza.com. Cuz like I was a kid, I didn't know. And like I this was not actually in a search engine. Like I just typed it in the address bar, which is super dangerous. Um but I remember having this similar thing like, I don't know how this works, but I see all these commercials and it's like McDonald's.com or whatever, like growing up where
Yeah.
there were all these commercials like go to our thing and it's like www.com. Like that was always the kind of sales pitchy, intonation of it all. So that's hilarious. Like I've never even thought about that memory since I had it because it was so lackluster. I was just like, okay, it's cheese. I think it lasted about 5 minutes, and then I went on I have no idea, reading actual books probably.
I
So
know, right? Well, because when you're a kid and you're first like getting into some of those technology things, you're like, I don't know what this does. Let's poke at it.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, and that's actually, gosh, that's like, I mean, a great segue. I mean, like children, I think naturally they want to find out the parameters. They want to find out boundaries. I've got a 3-year-old right now, so we're in the throes of like find the boundary, push it. How
Yep.
how far will mom and dad like put up with me if I do this thing, right? Like that's
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and it helps me be less mad as a parent when I realize like no, that's like part of his job because he's trying to figure out what the boundaries are. And um and one of the things that I find out in coder kids is the kids that are never given boundaries and that are given everything they want. Obviously, broad brush here. Clearly, not
Oh
every
yeah.
kid gets
Yeah.
everything they want, but there are kids. You've taught them that
Mhm.
haven't really heard no too many times, and they expect that just like any adult figure, basically is Amazon and just gives them whatever they want right then, and
Mhm.
um, and so yeah, finding boundaries is like a hard process, but it's so beautiful, and it comes with this just amazing amount of curiosity. Anyway, I'll talk less, but what's your
Oh
what's
no,
your
it's good.
view? So like, how did that curiosity guide you into tech, and like, how did you fall to where you are now?
Oh gosh, I think it just became, little by little. We would do things in the classroom because everyone was still learning technology. So, you know, I'd have a friend that would use what was the precursor to PowerPoint? Seriously,
Oh,
there was a
oh,
precursor.
oh! It's on the tip
Gosh,
of
I
my
can't even
tongue
remember what it's
too.
called.
Because
It's
like
some sort
Word
of slide.
Perfect was the Word version, right? And then there
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
something
And
presentation or some perfect presentation, or I don't know. I don't know.
I don't
It's
remember,
wrong.
but they were using the slideshow thing and they were making these funny like animation things to do their projects. And so then learning how to do that and learning how to play the games. And I've always loved video games. Like, I mean, we had all of the Nintendo systems from the original up. And then learning that technology could do so many things, learning that you could, I don't know, program it to do stuff. You getting that TI calculator and realizing that it could learn things. I mean, that was even when I was getting my teaching degree, learning about or in teaching school, learning about how you could use technology to teach kids, learning how the coding out the program could teach them about factoring, but then they could just keep using it for some of the more in-depth factoring and things like that. I just continually the thing about technology that just kept going with my brain is I just love things like that are logical, and I love the fact that when you're looking at it, it's not so scary. I actually, for a while, taught technology classes to people that were basically like 55 and older, mostly, or the people that took my class.
That's
And
fun.
just basic technology. Oh my gosh, they're the
I've done that
funnest.
before too. Yeah.
Yeah, and just going back to, I love that it makes me think about it more. Like to stop and say, okay, when do you left click and when do you right click? What does that mean? And then going
Yes.
back and explaining it to, okay, you shut down your computer because it's like cleaning up your kitchen before you come back to it, you know? All of these things. I think technology is so interesting is part of it. And just, I guess, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's just been kind of a thing that's just built that the more I learn about it, the more I think it's cool and the more I want to learn about it.
Yeah. 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 And I think similarly, I got a lot of this from my dad. Like he had an Amiga at home. Again, I've never said any of this stuff. And then also, later, Macs. We had Macs growing up, and he was a big Mac guy. I'm recording on Windows. Sorry, Dad. you know, he's still alive, so he's not rolling over in his grave yet. But it's I do think it helps if it's in the family. I think now it's a little bit different because everyone has it in the family. Everybody has a tablet. Everybody has a phone. If you don't have a phone, like homeless people have phones. If you don't have a phone, it's an active choice, right? Like I know this one teenager, we'll go nameless, go to church with, and they don't have a cell phone that's not shared with their parent, and that's a clear choice, and I support that. That's awesome. And whenever I have to contact this person for some kind of Sunday school lesson or what have you, we got to go directly through the parent, and so all of that traffic now has a distinguished path, and that's with everybody in mind. So it's but even in that case, the parent has an iPhone and whatever, right? So there's almost no getting away from it unless you want to go completely off grid. And then if you want to go off grid, there's technology for that. It's pretty fun.
I know,
So
right?
yeah, it's funny in that like off grid living has probably never been more possible since like solar panels and better versions of wind turbines and things that would actually generate power. So it's a bit of an oxymoron in that technology seems to connect us and yet also enables us to express ourselves, however we'd like to. So, talking, more about you, potentially your career. I'm really curious about how data analytics comes all into this. And so obviously this is what you do for your job. So if you don't want to talk too much about it, that's fine. But
That's fine.
how do you think about problems? Like, does your data analytics kind of side, does that reflect in your parenting? Does that reflect in your gaming? Is that just how your brain works? Like, how does it impact the other parts of your life is what I'm asking.
Well, I think that it helps as far. I've always had a little bit more of an analytical mind as far as like if when I go to the grocery store, I'm the person that picks up the 2 jars of pickles and divides the price by the number of ounces so that I can see the price per ounce. If they
The
don't put
true
it on the
price.
tag.
Okay.
So like I've always been a little bit more down on that lane of things. I like to look into what options are out there for me to get information about something. So for example, actually just the other day, my son was looking up a video game online and he was like, "Hey mom, is this one okay?" And it was one I hadn't heard of. So I went and I did some Google searching. They have a bunch of different kids in mind type websites for different games that'll tell you more specifically about the content. And so it was something where it would be okay if he only played it while I was in the room, kind of a thing, because
Yeah.
there's options. It's like there's different levels, but as far as that specific games goes, but I guess as far as data analytics goes, like that, I just more it helps me process the fact that not everything is the way you think it is when you first see it. Because when you do data analytics type projects, you're going in, obviously you generally go in with sort of a hypothesis or an idea, of what you're going to find. But so often when you start clicking, we generally have what we call splicers. So different things so that we can separate the data out and say, okay, I want to separate out by Montana and people this age. Or I want to separate it out by people who buy certain products or different things. That so often as we start separating things, it'll be some weird indicator that is actually throwing data a different way that you wouldn't think that is actually involved. And so I think that studying data analytics and then as you're more involved in it, sometimes it just a lot of times common sense and helpful things really are the answer, but two, to realize that sometimes there's something else going on at the heart. I guess that kind of helps me realize that, if there's something going on with my child, if there's something going on with my technology, it helps me try and say, what's at the root of this problem? How can I take away everything on the outside and get back down to what's really at the heart of the problem?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I listen to the podcast Freakonomics. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Oh, I've heard of it, but I haven't listened to that one
Freakonomics,
yet.
definitely. I know we're just advertising other podcasts here on this one, but this they do that. I mean, they analyze the economics of hidden, hidden economics of certain things, and they've been doing it for 10 years. So goodness, there's like 500 episodes to listen to, and they're all like an hour. um, so you'd enjoy those, but I do like finding information that's hidden or looking at different, information in a different light that I think can be really helpful. You're right. There are actually a lot of websites that talk about, how kid friendly a game is. We had a series on YouTube. It's called Kid Friendly Game Reviews. And one of the things that I noticed that these websites had and didn't have, and because there wasn't really like a video version of this, and I've stopped doing it, but I really enjoyed it while I did it, was they don't they just give it like an age rating, like kind of a blanket age rating. And so what I wanted was like very like hyper specific, one to like 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 point scale in in like sexuality, in profanity, and in violence. And then I wanted a separate kind of category. Just well, I had a fun score, so that's one where you'd want to get a high rating.
Oh,
The rest you wouldn't
yeah,
want
you
to get a
don't
high
have
rating. And then there was like a separate, like, what is the lesson this is trying to teach? And I felt like it was such a better way to think about video games. Um, and again, this is just like self promotion for a dead series, but they're fun videos if you want to check them out. Um, how do you think about video games in this way? Like when you're playing with your kids or when you're playing solo, when you're talking about getting to the heart of the matter, like what do you feel like enables you to find that?
So, do you mean like what enables me to find whether they're okay or not, or what enables me to like me and video games and kids? Because I mean, I just
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there. Yeah, let's.
whatever. Because I mean, I can start unpacking part of the reason uh, I think it's important actually to be a part of the video games your kids are playing, or at least be in there and understand who the characters are and what's going on. Because for one thing, kids crave you being part of their world. And sometimes I didn't always understand how much my son craved that. I mean, I obviously always played some video games with him, but it was so funny. I remember, so my son used to be the pickiest eater. And I remember one time, I don't remember what I was trying to get him to eat, but I was like, okay, listen, if you will take one bite of this, I will try absolutely anything you want me to try. I'll try anything. And I thought he was going to pick some weird food, but he was like,
Okay.
if you take, and so he was like, okay, if I taste this, you have to play Minecraft with me. And I was like, what? Okay, sure,
That's
whatever.
easy. Yeah.
Because
Well,
I
oh,
had
that's
just never
tough, kid.
gotten
I
into
don't know.
Minecraft. I'd always had him play Minecraft with his cousins. I'd never played Minecraft with him, but
Okay.
he wanted me to be part of his Minecraft world. And so, and I just didn't quite realize how important that was to him until then. So that's what we did. And I feel like too, part of it is like we play Roblox together is one of
Sure.
the other games we play a lot. And
It's hard to call that a
there's a
game, though. I'll be a little bit of
oh,
a
there's lots of games
contrarian.
on
It's like
Roblox.
thousands of games. It's like
Yes.
Roblox is a platform, and there's like horrific stuff on there and virtuous stuff and everything in between. Like,
And
sorry.
I think
Sorry to
oh
cut you
no
off.
no no, you don't have to be sorry. That's awesome because you're right. Roblox is a but like I think that's part of the reason that it's important that I play it with him is because then for one thing, it's funny when I don't do well. Like I'm a pretty good gamer just because I've played a long time,
Yeah.
but he thinks it's really funny when his grandparents play with him who are not good gamers because they're just hilarious. But it's because I remember being at school when I was a teacher teaching and these other teachers talking about, oh my gosh, did you see Roblox in the news? That thing's terrible. I won't let my kids touch it. Like, being a part of it, I was like, it's really not bad. Like, Roblox is really a cool place for the kids to be able to connect with each other and be able to do all of these things. Part of it is just starting early, teaching your kids that I'm going to be walking in while you're playing your games. Your games are going to be somewhere that I can see. And
I have your
these are the things
logins.
that
Like,
are
yeah.
appropriate. These are the things that aren't appropriate. And, that he knows. And he knows that if he started doing things that weren't appropriate, then yeah, we would cancel the game. But, then I would say, okay, you can't have this one. But overall, really, I mean, he plays games where they shoot little Legos at each other, or where we play this retail tycoon game together where we're both building up a store. Like, there's a bunch, like you said, it's a bajillion games all in one. But overall, the majority of the games on there are just fine. Like, you have to almost search for the games that have really bad content because most of them even have content filters on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, I think that's the thing is you have to dig in as a parent because what's okay for me and what's okay for Jenna here, like it's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
different, even slightly, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
and
what's up?
even even me and my wife, we have different kind of parameters, right? So we try to just pick something that we both like because there are thousands of video games just on Roblox and thousands elsewhere, and so you're not really limited to one or two. There's so
Oh,
many
no.
different types of play. So I want to get back to the heart of getting back to
Oh,
the
yeah.
heart of the matter, which is like,
Okay.
so I think some games have messages. Some might just there's
Hmm.
really not. Like I feel like Fall Guys is the one game that doesn't have a message. You're just like flopping around and
Learn physics.
it's hilarious. Yeah, it's great. But almost every game like has a theme or a message that it's trying to get across. And I feel like
Mhm.
that's never talked about. Um, I want to talk a little bit about, when something hits the news, right? Like, I don't know, Fortnite
Mhm.
causes aggression or something like that. And, or like video games cause aggression. Do you know, um, do you know, like, what's the truth to that, or is it true at all? Like, why are games good, and why could games be bad? I guess.
So I feel like games can be bad if you play some of the more intense ones. So, like, for example, Grand Theft Auto is
Mm-hmm.
not one that I will ever let my son play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that one has a lot of bad content. Part of it is because it's kind of like you said, message. And that one, the message really is, I mean, you do really bad, horrible things to gain health, and you do horrible things to gain points. That I feel like there's one thing when you're being a spy and you're kind of shooting other spies or something. Not that first person shooters, that's a whole thing to unpack because
Sure, sure, sure.
I there's a certain level of first person shooter that I let my son play, and there's a certain level that I don't. But like, but there's certain games like that where I feel like um, if you're doing it in Grand Theft Auto, the other distinguishing feature with that one is that you're interacting in a place that looks like a real city and looks like the real world
Yeah.
when you're playing that game. Versus if you're playing a race car game, you're obviously on a racetrack and you're obviously getting weird bonuses and things like that. So that's not going to make you a crazy driver. Maybe it'll make you think about it while you're driving,
I don't know.
but
Yeah.
it's not going to necessarily make you a crazy driver because you're not in the same situation or the same place as when you're visually seeing this all the time.
Yeah.
And, the same thing about aggression. And in some ways, I think it's almost a release that it's the same sort of thing that because somebody's a boxer and because they punch a punching bag doesn't mean they're going to go punch a person.
Sure.
But it helps them release that aggression and it helps them release that energy
Yeah.
so that they
That's so interesting. I think, and this is, I guess there are a couple of things that I think you could do. I don't know if you've done any of these, but sometimes I've taken an inventory of myself. Like, I'll play a game and then I'll be done with it, and then I'll say like, how do I feel now? Like,
don't.
how did I feel when I was playing, and how do I feel now? And there was a point where I've been playing Fortnite for years, since season 3 originally. And so I love that game, and I play it with my best friend, and I actually like 3D printed this Victory Royale. Um,
Ooh, nice.
it's got our names in it anyway. So like I'm clearly,
Like, I like it.
hook, line, and sinker with this game. But in an honest kind of inventory, I realized, while I was dealing with some anxiety, that my breathing would be irregular. My heart rate would go way up, especially like as I'm kind of when I'm in this, like the last 10 players of the game, right? It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple choices to make, like, hey, just keep doing this, but just know this happens, or maybe change something. And so one of the things that I focused on was when I would get to the very late game, I would have like hardcore breathing exercises, and I would force certain breathing exercises, and it actually helped me play better, which was interesting, but also helped me feel better, and it was kind of fun. And then other games, I realized I think Obzu is a good one. I don't know. Have you played that
I
one?
think I know that
It's
one.
like the soundtrack was done by the London Philharmonic Orchestra, so it's like super
Ooh,
super
fancy.
beautiful, and it's kind of this non-violent game, and it's just a diver, and so there's just all this
Oh,
ocean life, and the lighting is wonderful, and it's like tragic and beautiful, and it's all these things, but it's kind of like a work of art, more like than any kind of competitive thing, right? So
yeah.
after that, I just feel like, man, I could go to sleep, or I just feel super peaceful
Yeah.
and calm, or maybe in awe, you know. And so I think it's obviously, beyond the headlines. I think you've got to there are a couple of things that you can do. So what are some tools that you use to decide, hey, this game is okay, this game maybe we should try to play more. What would be some of the potential benefits, do you think, to playing?
So I think one, it's like you said, it's how do we talk to each other while we're playing the game? What kinds of things come out of our mouths while we're playing? Are we having fun and laughing, or are we like, what did you just do? Like, like, are we being kind to each other while we're playing? Are we able to just step back and realize it's a game? And then, as a, I guess one thing too is kind of just while you were talking, it made me think that just for those of us that have ADD, part of the thing too is that we have to be careful about addictions. So because we're very prone to addictions. People with ADD, people with autism, they're very prone to addictive behaviors. And so we have to be careful with video games. Like you said, we have to do self-evaluation all the time to make sure that we're not using it too much. But it actually really helps us to turn our brains off. So I use them sometimes because my brain is everywhere all the time. And so sometimes I use a video game to say, okay, let's turn everything down. And to decide whether a video game's good or not, sometimes I just will sit down and actually write out some rules. Like for one thing,
Okay.
if if there's a certain amount of blood, like or a certain amount of realism. So like I was talking about with first person
You
shooters,
measure in
like my
pints
son.
or what?
Yeah,
Sorry,
measuring
these are
plants.
the
I
jokes.
teach stuff
Sorry, these
out.
are
Yeah.
not good
No,
jokes.
you're good. I love jokes. You're good. Oh, wow, I just hit my computer. Anyway, so, no, but like we'll play this really old 007 game
Mm,
because like the people all look weird and like, they get like a little red dot on them and then they actually disappear. Or
mm-hmm.
like my son plays this Ravenfield game where it's basically looks like paintball. Like the people, like if they're blue, then they have blue splattery things everywhere, and if they're red, they have red splattery things. But like it doesn't look like anything, like But they're able to. But it's kind of like a hand-eye coordination targeting thing. Kind of,
Sure.
well, it's kind of like how you said with Fortnite. Fortnite's just like I didn't really ever get into Fortnite, but Fortnite is the same sort of thing when I've tried it. It's not like it's not like Call of Duty or something like that where you're getting a little more intense. So I
Yeah.
think, like I said, it's how do I feel before and after, and also what voice is in my head. Because if you play a game often enough, then the narrator's voice is going to be in your head sometimes. And do I want that voice in my head?
Oh yeah.
And do I want to be thinking back through strategy for this game later on in my life? Stardew Valley, very calming, very much, hey, let's support the community, like you were talking about messages for the game. What message am I choosing in this game too? Because a lot of games have pathways that you choose and that you're able to control what direction the game goes. And in this game, am I more prompted to choose the good pathway or am I more prompted to be evil? So,
Yeah, yeah,
really,
yeah. And it allows for this exploration, right? This kind of natural childhood exploration. I think that's part of the reason, if I'm being completely honest, Grand Theft Auto is so popular is because like no one really wants to do these things in real life. Um, and so we're just gonna have a bunch of fun doing them, in this game. And I will say, look, I'm, gonna be 33 tomorrow, and I played Grand Theft Auto for like 2 hours, and like I specifically like tried to do ethical actions. Like that was kind of the challenge. And like the tutorial is like stealing cars and robbing people and whatnot. And so like it's like there was no place for good. There was nothing I could do. It was like an entire world where there's like lots of parts of the game that I like the physics of it. I liked, the fact that it's actually mapped onto a real city. It's pretty cool. Like the driving, that kind of stuff. But the whole thing is hell bent on, and I think I'm choosing hell bent like on purpose as a term, because it
yeah.
is because like everything is bent downward. Like it doesn't let you be creative in the same way, and it just creates chaos, and like you can't do anything good or have any kind of good impact. And so for me, I just felt sick playing it, and so I just like quit. And I got the game for free, so I was like, whatever, I'm not supporting anyone, and I
Yeah.
still didn't want to. It was still like I just feel gross. And
Well,
here I am, 33. So my standards are different. Like you might be a well-adjusted adult and you play Grand Theft Auto and it's not a big deal. But yeah, for me, like yeah, I had to know when I felt icky or when I just didn't feel like proud of what I was doing. And I love doing something and then feeling proud about it afterwards. Like I go to the gym, I feel no regrets. Like there's
yeah.
no regrets there. If I play Super Mario 3D World, which I did a video
Yeah.
on with my 3-year-old son, and yes, he can actually play this game, which kind of blew my mind.
That's awesome.
He's still learning like the joysticks, and it's pretty slow, but it blows my
Mm-hmm.
mind how quickly he's adapting. Scares me too. But it's great. And so he and I play this game. Do I have any regrets about that? Like, if we do it for 5 hours, yeah, maybe a little bit. But any kind of certain an hour or two, I no regrets whatsoever. And then there's also kind of this other angle in parenting where this collaborative play like you're talking about, Jenna, like, and you being in their world, I think a lot of parents desire to be present in the lives of their kids. And like you said, that these kids want their parents to be interacting with them. And so can you speak to like being present and like what that allows you to do?
Yeah, well, and you can be present even if you aren't physically playing every game with them. Like, for example, there's this
Sure, you
Tabs
don't have time for
totally
that.
accurate battle simulator
Oh
that
my
he
gosh, that
loves
game.
playing.
That game.
It's hilarious. Oh my gosh. But I think part of being present is just one, walking in and looking at the game and asking questions. Two, and three is listening when they tell you about the game. Like when he comes in and he's going to want to give me a blow by blow of how this character he created fights, and then he's going to be like, "Oh, mom, there's this cool spot in the battle." and he's gonna want to slow it down to like I don't know what tiny speed and have me see this battle section, and I'm like, I'm cooking dinner. But like like
You do
I
want to eat,
think
kid,
that
right?
I know, right? But like the point of the part that for me to be present is to stop and take a deep breath and be like he's 14 right now, and be like, I only have my 14-year-old for a year. In a year he's going to be 15 and I will never have my 14-year-old again. And to be present with him right now is what matters. But you know what? Maybe instead of what I planned for dinner, we're going to have macaroni and cheese. I don't know. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is that I listened while he was talking. And that later on, when we're having dinner, I can be like, yeah, that guy, that spy you made, he was so cool. And that was awesome when so and so went flipping over the thing. Or wasn't that hilarious when, that I think that's part of what allows me to be present with my child is to be able to say, maybe I don't even fully understand all the things you're selecting because it's just not one of the games that I play with you. But I am going to listen to all the things and I'll ask you questions so that I can understand it better and show interest in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like sometimes the game is just like the vehicle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so many ways to look at it, but I really look at video games as just another art form. And everybody knows there's some trash paintings out there. Okay. And there just are. I mean, like I've been in a museum. I've been like, why is this
Why are
like
you in a museum?
I went to one gallery, and it was like it was a sink and like decapitated mannequin hands and like hair. It was this like modern piece,
Whoa.
and I was just like mad. I was just mad because I went in there. It wasn't anything offensive either. It was just like
No.
so stupid that it was offensive. And
You're like,
so
I could have gone to the dump and made this.
right, um and I hope that art blessed somebody, but I just don't think it did. And and so I think the great thing is we are not defending all video games as a thing, because it's not. It's
No.
every game is different. Every painting should be judged, um, for its own merit. And so I think sometimes when lumping in all the games together, our kids know that that's not true because they've played different games
Oh, yeah.
and they know this intuitively, and they're trying to express this. I think that the difficulty is when you don't necessarily have the language to know what all the Pokemon names are, or you don't know all the stats, or you don't know the strategies, or you don't know anything. But I think, Jenna, what you're saying here just makes perfect sense. Like, you don't really have to, as long as you're like interested and engaged and you're asking questions that say
Well,
that you're interested, right?
and I
And then
think
they'll
too,
tell you.
sometimes,
They'll tell you everything.
well, sometimes it's about finding an entry point. Like,
Yeah,
no, maybe you're not going to sit down and watch every Pokemon episode with them, but you know what? Pokemon Go is a really simple app to just, and it actually gets you out walking around.
sure.
Ooh, look, I got another Rattata, or however you say it, and then they can tell you about them and whatever. Like, like it's something you can do while you're with them. And okay, this is going to be somewhat off topic, but I keep remembering it as you're talking, and I'm going to
Go ahead.
forget it if I. Sorry.
Go ahead.
This
Yeah,
is
shoot.
deep brain. So is that too like is like you said, not all video games are the same, and your kids know this. Is sometimes being willing to look for a version of a game that is okay for your kids. So,
Okay.
for example, sometimes whether they want to play a fighting game or like when you were talking about an open world game, is being able to find one that you're okay with that level of game and say, okay, you can play this one. For example, that was why we got into first person shooters because my son wanted to play a first person shooter. And so I was like, okay, I'll find one that's okay for you. Or, like
Yeah.
he wanted to play like a real time game where everyone was fighting. So I actually talked to my brothers too, and we found him one that was gonna be like orcs and people, so it was different. Or even like with the Grand Theft Auto open world, all of the Elder Scrolls, when you get to like the fourth and fifth one, then they're rated M, and so I have to figure out how to recode those so they're not. You can
Right.
actually recode some games to make them better. But Morrowind, the third one,
Yeah.
that one is like rated T. It's actually pretty good. I've played it a few times. I like that one. But it's more of an open world where they can go out and make their own choices, and there's consequences like you either follow the quests and do good, but you can actually kill the person that's part of the quest, and then your consequence is you can't ever complete that quest. You killed them. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no. Anyway, so I guess that's just one of the things I was thinking too is that there are versions of anything that your kids want to play. So maybe they want to play Grand Theft Auto and you're like, "No." But you know what? You can play Morrowind and it's the same ish. Or
Or
you can't play this, but you can play this racing version.
yeah, or
Or
Prison Break and Roblox. That one's pretty fun and one of the most
yeah.
popular games there. Um,
Or and then that gives you an in too because that shows them that you're not going to say no to everything and that you are actually aware that some things are good, some things are bad. I'm not going to wholesale tell you you can't play anything. You
yeah.
just have to put limits. And that's a good adult skill too because no matter what you're doing, you have to put limits on it. I mean, I can't work a 24/7. I can't do anything 24/7 and and I have to say this is okay, this is not okay. It helps them learn to put boundaries too.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So when I'm thinking about games and I'm thinking, so I mean, a couple of things we've learned so far, just kind of summary. Like every game is different. It's
Mhm.
its own art form. Your kids are probably going to love it. They're going to want to do different things. And because every game is its own experience, there's going to be different feelings during and after. You know, you'll maybe want to encourage them to play certain games and maybe not others, but also to intelligently like understand what they're playing is one of the biggest skills you could give.
Mhm.
So this is my little rant here about the education system, but the public education system in America and pretty much everywhere else is founded on this idea of, which made sense at the time, right? This kind of industrial schooling model where there was information in a very specific location. So it was like location based. You had to go to a library, like the Library of Alexandria or whatever, before it burnt down, right? Or whatever physical location, like a university, a library, or a church. Like those were locations where you could learn stuff, and then you would go home and you wouldn't have it. There like wouldn't be written texts. There would be a Bible maybe, and like that was it. And so you'd go to university, or if you wanted to become an expert in a field, because I was like the only people that had kind of deep knowledge on a certain subject, and that was it. And so that's not how the world works. And so how this connects is what you're talking about. You're giving these kids the skill to be able to filter and to be able to assess and to be able to like inventory themselves. And that's what's needed in an age where not all of the information in the world, because there's still a lot of books that aren't digitized and like old journals and stuff. So I don't want to say all the information's on the internet, but so much. And more information is generated like in a single day, right? That can be consumed in a lifetime. I butchered that quote. So,
Oh,
but
that's all good.
so you know, because of that, I mean, I think that the work you're doing with your kids is probably going to bless their life, um, probably constantly, because the world just wants you to digest whatever it's giving you, right? Whether that's just like big corporations, or Disney wants you to watch the latest Star Wars thing, which I religiously do, and it's that's what it wants. But I think asserting your own will, I think, is the real skill here, and being able to, I don't know, do that at an earlier age, I think equips your kids better, because someone else is going to tell them what to do if they don't have any kind of will of their own. So
Yeah, no,
go
I
ahead.
love that. And I think, oh no, I was just thinking what you're saying is being very transparent with them. about why you're making the decisions you're making. Two, helps them, just as you're talking, is being very transparent about, hey, I looked up that this is how I researched this game. This is how, when I look at this information, I either push it away or I don't. Like my undergrad is actually in zoology and in science, and just even too with the data, like a lot of times we'll hear things on the news or we'll hear things other places and I'll just laugh and I'll tell my son, okay, notice how they only studied 50 people for this.
Yeah.
Or like I teach him how to evaluate. And that's what I did with my students too, is like you said, like I think like you said, a big thing is really being very transparent and not ever saying, well, this is just because I told you so, saying, giving them the reasoning behind your thinking so that they can learn that process.
And they'll still argue with you, but
Oh, yeah.
but at least they got it,
Yeah.
and in some sense they can kind of offload that reasoning, which is interesting. One of the things we
Well, sometimes
found,
they make a good point, and you're like,
yeah,
okay, maybe. All right, well, we'll look at that again.
and sometimes you're guilty as charged. I was in the middle of a conversation with my wife around the dinner table. My son, he saw that we were a little bit like standoffish. We weren't like mad, but we weren't, and he point blank asked Laura, "Are you happy?" And Laura's like, "No." We just start laughing. She didn't want to lie to him, and we both start laughing, and it was just like, man, kid's right, kids, he's understanding these emotions that we talked about when he's played games or when he's painted stuff or when he's we've tried to tell him about his own emotions, and now he's just flipped the script. Now he's calling us out, and it made our day better, like it actually
Yeah.
did. And so I think viewing your kids as people, I think, is helpful, because they are.
Hmm.
And I think in and as an educator, and I think this is really interesting. I'd love to hear your backing on education and how educational decisions should be made. But my personal goal is to offload as much decision making responsibility to him as quickly as possible, and to my daughter. Now she's 1; it's going to be a while before she's deciding what her own media is, right? But what's your perspective on that from an educational standpoint? Like, what's
I
important to teach, like in the school or at home, or what is important for middle school or high school kids to learn? What's like the most important thing they could learn?
Oh gosh. So I feel like in a way that's almost two different questions. So as far as offloading the decision making, I feel like that has to be something where it's done in a safe way for them, because if you give kids too much freedom, they say they want that, and that's what they'll tell you they want, and they'll pretend they're happy with that, but they really feel very insecure if they have too much freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It tend to, as they get older, obviously you give them more and more freedom, but okay, there's a couple of different examples here I'm going to give you.
Go
Okay.
for it. Yeah, shoot.
So okay. So we're gonna start with one of my favorite like parenting books for especially kids, and I'm gonna say too. I never follow any one parenting book to the letter. I feel like they all have to be adjusted to your child. Any one of them, if you just went gung ho with it, I think you'd be crazy. But there's this Love and Logic book.
Yeah.
They have actually a Love and Logic for early years that I love because it's for the kids 0 to 6, and they use decision making as a reward.
Mm.
So if you are being compliant and you're doing the things you're supposed to do, then I'll let you make more and more decisions. So for, do we want to drive home slow or do we want to drive home fast? And you start off with decisions that aren't going to make a really huge impact on anybody's day. But they got to make that decision and they get to see the consequences of that decision. And I feel like even with my middle schoolers and my high schoolers, I mean, I will let them make different sorts of decisions. I would let my middle schoolers make decisions that made a little less impact on the class than I would my high schoolers. Like I would let my high schoolers almost direct the curriculum a little bit more and say, okay, how do you feel about this topic? Are you ready to move on a little more than I would my middle schoolers? Because my middle
Mm.
schoolers will always be like, yes, let's just move on. I don't want to do anything else. Like, where my high schoolers were a little more mature and a little more ready to give that. And so, as far as decision making goes, I feel like you have to kind of maturity level release that a little bit. And also, I saw that my other example with that is sorry, and I'm just kind of talking a lot about
This
this,
is
but
great. This is good.
my other example with that is honestly, like for example with cell phones. Um, I found that actually as a teacher, I would hear a lot of kids get out of trouble because they knew that their parents weren't allowing them to do certain things on their phone or that their parents were checking their phones. That there were a lot of times that I knew that, like, we'll just call Susan, for example, didn't actually want to be texting these things back and forth with her friends, but she was able to get out of that whole situation just by saying, oh, I can't, my mom checks my phone. And so,
Mm.
especially when kids are younger and in their middle school ages, and until they start getting closer to when they're going to be off, when they're heading off to college, they're going to have to learn to manage themselves on their own. But especially when they're first getting their phones and things, that really helps them get out of trouble if they know they can rely back on that. They can fall back on, oh, I'm sorry, my mom
Yeah,
checks my
back
phone,
up.
or my dad checks my phone. I can't. That you got to be careful how much freedom you give a kid at different stages, just because that they need that protection, they need that backup of like I can rely back on this.
I have a fully formed brain, and I'm a parent, and
Exactly.
yeah, like these kids. Yeah, especially I guess in the teenage years, or honestly, like starting like you're 12 or whatever, like hormones are hitting. There's all kinds of stuff out there, and it'd be nice to have some extra strength as backup. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and like I got like there's all sorts of different tracking apps out there. Like I have a family app that's on my son's phone now, so like, and or even when you first get him, like he knows that I can see where he's at. He knows that I can see what apps he downloads. So
yeah,
that helps. But he's 14. As he gets to be 17 or so, I'll probably pull some of that back just because I'll say, okay, I need you to know that you can come and talk to me if you run into trouble, but you're going to be heading off to college, and I want you to be able to start, being able to manage this on your own while you're still in a safe place.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
these are tough, conversations, and ones that I had with my dad. When I went to college and whatnot, and I was making my own decisions, but yeah, I think I turned out all right.
Yeah,
In
you made
in
it.
in part, yeah, in part because my dad trusted me to make the right decisions, and he had conversations with me about, okay, what do you want exactly, and how are you going to make that happen, and like let's plan this out. How are you going to get what you want, and does what you want or what you say you want, is that what you actually want? Like, what's the outcome that you desire? So I think all of those things are super important, and have to happen between somebody, and it might as well be
Yeah.
the parent. So
I,
on to this like
oh,
kind of second question about, what do you think is most important for middle schoolers and high schoolers to learn in terms of grappling with technology in that world?
well, I mean, well, as far as grappling with technology, I guess when you first asked what's the most important thing for them to learn,
Sure.
in general, I think the most important thing is they need to get rid of their limiting beliefs.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay. Yeah.
even especially I think as a math teacher, my like kids will somehow early on they put themselves into categories, whether or not it's in grade school or whether or not they've picked it up from a teacher that said a subject was hard or a subject was easy, or that he listened to their parents. That's another thing that parents need to be especially careful about is throughout grade school and throughout other things, is talking about any subject as difficult. Because if you talk about any subject as difficult, your children will internalize that and they'll feel that that subject is difficult as well, whether or not it's actually difficult for them. And
Yep.
so then by the time I get them as middle school and high school students, I had to pull down that wall and say, hey, look, you actually can do this. Oh, look, this really wasn't as hard as you thought.
Yeah.
Until the kids would finally say, oh, oh, I can do this. And to pull away those limiting beliefs of, I can do anything that makes me happy. As far as I could have any career that I want and make it successful. That, obviously, anything legal, but like, I can, that, I had a
Yeah.
student that he was brilliant. And, but he has to earn money for his family. He's in a situation where he's going to have to be kind of the breadwinner. There was just problems. But you know what? He is in a situation. We got him onto a place where he can start an apprenticeship with an
Okay.
electrician company, and they're going to help him get his electrical engineering degree still. That
Whoa. Whoa.
there's no limits to what you can do. And then there's all these other students that will walk into the classroom and say, "Oh, I just can't do this." Like even with technology, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not good at coding, I'm not good at math." But you
Oh
start
man.
them off and you're like, well, can you do 1 plus 1? Huh? And then they'll laugh and they'll get going with you. And eventually they're doing all these complex equations and then they stop themselves and they're like, oh my gosh, I just did that. And that's my biggest thing, honestly, is you learn things and it helps your brain. Like anything that you learn in middle school and high school, it helps your brain develop. It helps your brain learn how to think logically or how to think creatively or how to think different things. That's what I would always tell them. They'd be like, when am I going to use this as an adult? And I'd be like, I was like, my number one job as a math teacher and a science teacher was
Hmm.
to teach kids to think critically and to think logically because that's
Yeah.
the pathways in the brain that develops. And for the kids then to be able to, and with coding it's the same thing, it teaches you to think logically, it teaches you to be able to say, this is the result that I want, how can I build to that result, to understand that kids, I think that's the biggest thing for kids to learn, is to understand that they can reach whatever goal they want, that every problem has a solution, that you can get through these things, that even if life is hard, even if you've got some sort of learning disability, that you can go where you want to go. I've taught kids that had, fairly severe, like I've had taught kids that had different levels of autism that said, I want to go be an engineer and this is the only level of math I've learned so far. And it's like, okay, cool, no worries. You can do this class. Just follow along with me and we'll get you there.
Yeah.
That I think that's the biggest thing that I would teach any kid is to take away those limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. So they can come from all kinds of places, right? They can come from an off thing one of your friends said once. They could come
Yeah.
from a nickname. They could come from your parents. It could come from yourself. I mean, I have limiting beliefs about myself. Maybe I should stop believing that I'm 5'4". We could start believing. I'm just kidding. Maybe I can grow further. No, it's okay. I
You can
actually
always get
like.
boots with heels.
What's right? Oh my gosh, yeah, no, and roll my ankle. I can't wait. I actually love my height. It's something that's fun. I fit on airplanes great, and no one else does. But they made them for 5'4" people. That's why. They not you. They didn't make them for the average person. They
It's a
made them for
target
me.
audience.
Yep. So sorry for all you poor blokes out there, but it's great for me. So, no, I kid, but yeah. So these limiting beliefs. I mean, I guess how would that impact use of technology, for a parent or a child? You know.
I think for both. I think there's so many parents out there that just feel like, oh, this isn't something I grew up with, or this isn't something I've
Ooh, that's a good
gone
one.
into, and so it's too late for me. I just whatever, I don't get it. Like, or I'm not good at math. I'm not good at this. Like, they start telling themselves that, and all it does is it creates a block in your mind. As soon as you say that, there's this like almost door you shut, and if you feel it, you can almost feel it in this part of your brain. You feel
Mm,
that door shut, and then nothing else is going to come in, and It's that
Yeah.
old saying that if you think you can, you can, and if you think you can't, you can't. That what you need to instead say is, no, I'm not on that level, but I could understand the basics of what's going on. Like anybody can understand at least the basics of what is happening. And the problem is too is a lot of times you've had somebody explain it to you that's not translating. Like you really need to look
Mm,
at technology as another language. Like
yeah.
how then we literally call them programming languages. You know,
Yeah.
Python, Java, all of those things are languages because you are speaking another language. Random story, I actually had a student that was coding so much that he answered an open-ended question in coding and he didn't even notice he was doing it. It was hilarious. It was
Oh
awesome.
my
Gave him
gosh.
it was awesome. But
Oh,
it was amazing. But like it's literally another language and to understand that the same way that you wouldn't expect somebody to be able like the problem is a lot of people that are in technology, it would be the same thing as if you don't speak Spanish and you walk up to someone and say, "Oh, what does this Spanish page say?" and they just read it to you in Spanish. That's not going to help you.
right.
They have to translate it to English. And so you need to find a teacher that translates technology to English for you.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's what we've done today. We tried. It's been a good effort. You know, Jenna, where can people reach out to find more of the stuff that you do, especially if they have ADHD or they're trying to parent and trying to play video games proactively and
Yeah, well, my website is just officeadhd.com. And even if it's not about ADHD, if they just want to reach out to me about the stuff we talked about, they can just always go on there. I have a contact form, or it's just Jenna at ADHD at officeadhd.com. So yeah, they go to my website, then I'm there and they can contact me about anything. It's all good.
well, great. Well, thank you so much. I've had a ton of fun. I love doing these things. I mean, being a parent, being an educator, having that in common, being a gamer, it's also a lot of fun. I mean, the truth is I've played totally accurate battles, battle simulator. I've played Stardew Valley, I've played Grand Theft Auto like you were talking about. I've played a lot of these Roblox games. So I actually do know like what you're talking about and so I can be kind of another, you know, person talking about this in a way that hopefully makes sense. Like, I think the message really is like, if you're a parent, your kid wants you in their life, even if they
Mm-hmm.
play like they don't, they like you probably want to interact with them. And for better or worse, video games can be an excellent vehicle, and at least certain games, and you have to do some experimentation, but I think it's well worth it.
Oh yeah, and you know what? Just start by learning the main character's name. If nothing else, learn who the main character is in every game they play.
Yeah,
That's an excellent start.
and it's Steve in Minecraft. So there you go. There's your first
Yes.
one. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Bye.